Alright everybody, so welcome to the video, and today I'm going to explain a little bit about the Gentoo file systems, a little bit about the configuration files, and just get over a bit of confusion. We've had a lot of questions about how we work in this environment, i.e. no graphical user interface, how we know where stuff is, and it just looks like the Matrix. So basically guys, once you get the hang of it, moving around isn't too hard. Some of the other tasks may be a little bit complicated, but here we go. So there's a few things we need to remember. The hard disks have file systems. So we have one hard disk inside this machine currently, and it is split into 5 partitions. Now each of these partitions have a file system. So dev SDA1, SDA2, SDA3, SDA4, SDA5. These all come off one hard drive, but we've split that hard drive into 5. We've also applied 5 different file systems to each of these partitions. So dev SDA1 is VFAT, and that's because it holds EFI boot information. It's just something that goes on with Linux now. Dev SDA2 is another boot drive, and that is ext2. Dev SDA3 is swap, which is virtual RAM. We actually have 16 gigabytes of that. Dev SDA4 is our root file system, not the root user, but the root file system, which is the top directory. So if you were on Windows, it would be C, the C drive. And dev SDA5 is the home directory for the users. So if we had a user John or Mary, Mark, each of these users have a folder, and that is in the home directory. Now dev SDA5 actually resides inside dev SDA4 because the file system goes like this. So currently pwd, we are in root, not the root user, but we're in the root user's home directory. So that's where we currently are. If we go to cd /, this is basically like the C drive of Windows. So ls-l, this is going to list the directory structure, and as you can see, this would be like clicking the C drive on your Windows computer. So it would be Windows program files 64, blah 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 blah. So guys, so the cd command, we have moved now into the root directory. That's where we are. Now each of these directories hold certain bits of information, and as I just said, the home directory, there's no point me going in there because we don't have any users added to the machine. This is actually dev SDA5. This folder is linked or connected to device SDA5, which has the ext4 file system. So that folder is connected to that hard drive. And there's different reasons for this, guys, backing up, and you know, if you wanted to copy, the more you get down the line, the more you'll understand. The root folder, where we are now, we are not in home, we are in the root folder, pwd, you see /, the top directory is this hard drive. Boot is this one, and boot EFI is this one. Number 3 is our virtual RAM. So guys, now why have we got all these directories? Just like Windows, it doesn't really matter if you're using it and you know, as a day-to-day user, but the bin folder is where it holds all our binary files. So we can just have a little look. You know, it's got some command, kind of like commands, but the binaries for them. the boot folder. Again, we've just gone over that. That holds our like boot information. So inside there, we've actually got EFI. And inside, in fact, guys, look, I must explain this as well. They won't actually be mounted. We have to get into this in another video. See, now that I've mounted the drive, you can actually see files inside of the drive. But there's no, right now this drive doesn't need to be mounted, but this isn't the point of this video, guys, so we're just going to go back to where we were, back into the root folder. Right, next we've got the devices folder. So the devices folder holds things like our devices, like our mouse, CPU. It's just got information about the devices, and you remember, guys, everything on here is kind of run in text files and directories, and that's kind of how you work around in this environment. Now, probably my most favorite directory is the etc, because this is where it holds all of our sort of configuration files, guys, and what I mean by that is things like our make.conf. So I've just displayed the information on the screen. From here to here is what's in the make.conf. For instance, grub platforms EFI64. That's in there so that when we emerge grub, it tells grub to use this usable flag, and this flag tells grub to compile grub from source code with this information that is required in the source code. So it's basically telling grub to do something that is needed for EFI boot. We also have things like you can add in here your mirrors, use flags. We could add up here things like how many cores we have on the computer. So you have a command called makeops, and just for the purpose of the video we can go J2, but this, guys, you would just add an extra core on. So if your computer had 8 cores, minus J9, you know, if it had 4, minus J5, so on. Also in here, this is one of the most powerful configuration files on Gentoo, in my opinion, because it tells emerge, which is the application you use to pull in your packages from the internet, which flags to set. There is other ways of setting the flags from the command prompt, guys, but most people would have them set for this. So for instance, if we was going to install the GNOME desktop, we would want to add the -KDE flag and things like -Qt5 and things like this. But you can also, for instance, compile Firefox with no JPEG support, or no. It is such a powerful tool, guys. I will do a whole video on the emerge command and the package.use and unmasks and things like that. Some packages are masked, some have licenses, so on. But back to the directory. So we're currently in etc. We've just dropped back to the root directory. The lib and lib64 folders, guys, are the libraries. So this is where it's kind of like Windows sort of files. It's just like the libraries, guys, you know, program share libraries, and this is just where those things are stored. Media, the media folder is where if you plug something in, this is where it would generally be mounted. We don't currently have anything popped in there. The mount folder is for temporarily mounted devices. So, like if you popped a USB stick in, you could mount it to there. Media and mount are quite similar, but there is a difference. The opt folder is where you would have mostly proprietary software. The proc folder, it kind of works with the kernel and processes, I guess, process IDs, and that's kind of the same as run. In theory, I don't know. It's quite hard to explain, guys. sbin is our command folder. It's basically, this is where like your commands are kind of stored, I guess. Again, guys, it's so hard to explain, but you know, USB, guys, that's a folder that I made for myself. The user folder is it kind of holds up profiles, like programs use it to store certain bits of information, like kind of like a cache a little bit, but like maybe some icons for something or whatever. var, I love the var folder as well, great on Apache, and it's your log folder, guys. And some people, I don't know why I don't, in fact, hold this on a separate hard disk. It's good for administrations. If I'm building servers for people, we always have this, and then have the var logs come back to us so we can check that the systems are okay. So, guys, that's basically it on the directory structures. But again, while we're on the video, let's just talk a little bit about the merge command. So we've got the merge here, and there's a lot of variables you can add here. I'm just using the ask for both, guys. You can do a pretend, but let's just say Firefox, and by God, let's not merge that because that will take a long time. So what's happening here, guys, is this is going through our portage directory, which is inside the user folder, user portage, which is the latest version. It's like syncing, and then it's going to look for the package, and we can then pull that package in. But because we're doing ask first, and verbose is obviously display the information, we are able to kind of see which flags or dependencies and other things may be pulled in with this package. Now we're now able to go back to the make.conf, so you would go like nano-w frontses etc portage make.conf. Go to that bit where I was showing you the use flags, and you can then add or take away these flags that Firefox is going to bring in while it's compiling. And this is why Gentoo is so powerful, guys, because you are building everything from source, and you can see what is dependent on what. So look, here we go, guys. Right, for these we would have to probably change our profile list because we are not on a desktop, so that as far as I know, there isn't a command sort of based Firefox, but I'm just trying to explain what I mean here. Right, guys, so look, it actually wants to pull in FFmpeg, and that's kind of a encoder decoder codec. And for instance, you can pull this codec in without actually having the X environment flag. See, all of these red use flags, these are applied by default. So bzip2, we could actually go into the use, put a minus bzip2, re-emerge this, and this will now be blue. These are all the ones that aren't going to be pulled in with the packages, guys. So And as you can see, just to pull Firefox in, guys, we've got to merge all of these packages. And again, guys, you can be